Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the very first time that we're going to do video with a trainer. This is questions that I'm going to ask an experienced trainer about their experiences, knowledge, skills, everything about their workforce. So I'd like you to put your hands together virtually for the training guy, Rick Holt. So Rick, tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience as a talent development professional.
Sure, Lori. So interesting start. I was in the military for quite a while, and of course the military does a lot of training. Actually, my first job in the military was titled executive officer, but training officer as well. So it's interesting starting off in that aspect. And then when I got out of the military, looking for different jobs, interviewing with different people, the one that resonated the most and made the connection was a job within the restaurant industry with PepsiCo, where I was chosen or selected to be a district manager, or certainly a district trainer. Later on, I became a district manager, but I was a district trainer in Orlando, Florida. So that was a wonderful experience. So on and off training in Florida with PepsiCo for a while, and then training with a company called Pilot Travel Centers for a number of years. And for the last 10 years, I've been with George Mason University, actually doing training or learning and professional development as well.
Thanks so much, Rick. Now, I have been very blessed because I got to work with Rick Holt at George Mason University and hear some of his really great stories. In fact, he's got a really good story about how he started out in this business. Rick, do you mind sharing that story with us?
Certainly. So when I started up at my first assignment at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, being a training officer, one of the duties was to train the soldiers in different topics, one being the Geneva Convention and the law of land warfare. It just so happened, though, that this was in the summertime in South Carolina, and it's probably about 90 degrees. So 300 soldiers, you can picture this, 300 soldiers coming into a big auditorium with metal seats. It's hot. They have large fans on, making lots of noise, but probably not cooling people down too much. And then I'm up on a stage in the front by myself with two TVs up that are going to play video of the law of land warfare, where I have the soldiers watch that, and then I talk about that with them to make sure they understand the concepts and topic. Imagine, though, they've been up since about 5 a.m. in the morning for their physical training and getting up and moving around, doing different things. And this is sometime late in the afternoon, probably 3 or 4 o'clock. And it's also, again, 90 degrees, and you're watching a video in a very hot, not very comfortable room. So anyways, that was a pretty interesting experience, trying to have a lecture download with 300 people in this environment that wasn't conducive to training. And so it was an aha moment for me on how am I going to make this different going forward to make sure that people walk away with a better understanding of the topic. That was probably one of the most interesting or toughest environments I ever had to go into. And of course, one of my first experiences too. So I was almost like, how am I going to get better at this going forward?
I like your positivity, Rick. That's awesome. How am I going to get better at this? Now, the only other thing is that if it would have been 2 o'clock and they had just eaten something, then they'd be like, nap time.
Yeah, so it would have been a lot worse.
They always say, don't ever show a video right after they've eaten. One really good question. I know you're very passionate about training and development. Tell me what you love about being a training and development professional.
I think it's the opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. As we know, adults come into training and they want to learn specific areas or improve in different areas. So they have specific items they want to learn. And I think actually having the chance to meet them, get to know more about them, what they're looking for, and then finding ways to actually get that information and present it in a way that they can actually grasp that and then take that away with them to make a difference in their life. So that interaction, that energy, that ability to make a difference is what keeps me in this business.
And one thing too I know about you is that's one of your greatest strengths as well, that not only do you get to know people, but you like to ask them a lot of questions so you can know even more about them. I always tell the story that when I was working with Rick, he would leave for a training class and it was over at 4 and he wouldn't be back until about 5 or so. And I'm thinking, where's Rick? Where's Rick? And he would be out doing what he needed to do, talking to everybody in the class, making sure they were doing great, making sure they learned what they needed to learn. And that special part of him is like the most wonderful aspect and strength that I think Rick has with training. Another question for you, Rick. Tell me a time when you were at your best, kind of in the flow. You know what they say, you're in the zone. What were you feeling? What was happening? And why was this experience so great for you?
I think when I do Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that I am really in the flow, and those times when, especially in some of the habits, different habits resonate with different people different ways. However, when I get into ones like seeking to understand before being understood, those actually resonate quite a bit with me because I'm a motivational listener. I know people talk about being motivational speakers, but I think listening can give you a lot more information and tell you about people and give you an opportunity to move in the direction you need to go to work with them and help them out at the same time. So I think getting into the Covey conversation and talking about the 7 habits, that really resonates with me. And at that point, when I see the people reflecting on those different concepts and actually picking up on that information and wanting more, that's probably the moment I'm in the flow, when I really feel like they're getting that and it resonates with them.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that's being in the flow, and I've seen you teach Covey, and you're excellent at that, especially with the stories that you tell and making sure that you're listening to the people that are sharing their stories with you as well. Now, who do you look up to in the training and development field? Are there any experts that you really think are wonderful? And I know you mentioned Covey. Is Covey one of your experts?
I guess if you look at there's probably 3 that I've picked up that I feel comfortable with. Covey is something that I like to model, and it's something I've taken it close to my heart there as far as something that I understand those concepts, and I feel very comfortable using those concepts and relating to other people, and also using them in my life. So beginning and the end in mind, looking out and see what's important to you. But also well-being as more of late has been something that I'm really interested in. And Tom Rath and looking at Gallup and what they've been doing in that area, looking at the 5 areas of well-being, I think that makes a huge difference in how people come into the workplace. They're more resilient. They're more active and productive in the workplace. If those areas, if people are able to balance that out or actually have ways to build themselves up in those 5 areas of well-being. And then it's interesting. I haven't done a lot with Blanchard, but I use Blanchard a lot to talk about situational leadership. And I think that resonates with a lot of people as well, because they can see that not everybody's in the same place at the same time. No matter who they are, no matter how experienced they are, they take on new tasks. There has to be a different kind of leadership or understanding of where they are with that particular skill set at that time. But I've also been blessed to have a lot of great supervisors along the way. You're one of them, so that's wonderful. So I get to work with you for 9 years. But I've had other supervisors in the past that also had those kind of skill sets. They were able to help me develop my skills and to make me help me be a better trainer.
Thank you, Rick. I really appreciate the compliment too. It was great working with you and the team when we were there. In fact, I watched you on your CPL journey trying to get your CPLP. And presently I've been working with a lot of CPLP study groups. And what I realize is that when I teach classes for people trying to get their CPLP, a lot of people will go in the study group, they'll study, they'll say, oh yes, I'm going to get it. And then they don't end up taking the test. I don't know if you call it chickening out. I don't know what you call it, but at the very, very last second, they just decide not to do it. So why did you get your CPLP? How did you make that connection that you study for it and you're going to take the test? And what does it mean to you?
Well, it's interesting. I'm a pretty smart person, I think, so I'll take that credit. And knowing that my supervisor thought it was pretty important made it very important for me as well. So I remember actually when you interviewed me for my position I'm in now, you had a question you asked about, did I know what CPLP was? And that was 2007. I think it just started in 2006. So I wasn't really aware of it. However, I think in looking at that and being presented that information, that body of knowledge that helped me be more well-rounded as a trainer, that's what probably was the incentive to move forward and to work through that learning process. I loved doing the delivery training. That was the one the video I put forth for my work product. And that's my favorite part of training. So that's great. I was able to do that. But I think it gives you a better understanding of the field and helps you interact more and network more with people within the field of training and organizational development, coaching, those type of areas. I've taken the PHR exam in the past as well. I think it's really about you learning new information, finding ways to use that information to be able to be more effective in the classroom, or to be more effective in whatever particular part of training and learning that you're involved in, learning development you're involved in. So workplace coaching is something I've been involved with a little bit lately. Now, coaching, it comes in different ways. And so I think if you look at jobs I like to do and jobs I don't like to do, I guess, coaching, I love doing coaching for people who want to enhance their skills or improve their skills. So if somebody's coming at it with a positive focus or approach, then I think it's all about me sitting down with them and trying to help them, being a sounding board, giving them some ideas when they invite me into the conversation. But coaching on the other side, for example, though, coaching for where people are having performance issues, not the area I like to go to, probably not my strong suit, and not an area I feel as comfortable with, even though that is part of the overall process of being a CPLP. I understand that coaching model, but that's not something I really like to spend time doing. So I think that the CPLPs, we have our areas that we like more than others, and that's fine. I think it's more, though, that having a complete understanding of the field and being able to contribute to the field, but also use that information to help your organization is very powerful.
Thanks, Rick. I was just working with a client recently that asked me to teach a class on customer service, and she wanted me to go into her department, and I asked her if I can interview people in the department. She picked two supervisors for me to interview, and she said it wasn't the supervisors that were having the issue, it was the people answering the phones, that kind of a thing. And she wanted a 2-hour class in customer service to help those people get better. And I said to her, why 2 hours? Why customer service? I was asking her a lot of questions. And I said, well, okay, at first it was a 4-hour class, and then she put it down to 2-hour class. And I said, well, why does it have to be a class? Why can't we just go in and find out what's going on with your group, maybe do a retreat, that kind of thing? And she told me, definitely not. They definitely want a class. It's got to be a 2-hour class, and it's customer service. And I'm thinking, some of these people have been there for 30 years, and they know what customer service is. Mm-hmm. But it might not have been that motivation. Sometimes training's not the answer.
Correct.
What do you do when you know you're teaching a class and you figure out training's not the answer?
When I'm already teaching the class and I figure out from the participants that it's not working for them?
Yes.
I think that when we, as trainers, as professional development people, we need to be prepared to move in different directions. So what I do is when I come into a class experience like that, I'll have multiple exercises, different things I can use. So if that's not resonating with the audience, I can move in a different direction based upon their needs. I think we have to be prepared for that too. So you have to have the toolbox ready to go. And this is probably not a perfect example, but I was teaching strengths for a group last year, probably, I think it was a couple years ago, where it was introduction to strengths, I thought it was. And so I went in and started teaching that, and I found out that that's not what they needed. They needed team strengths. So you have to be quick, you have to be able to be flexible and move in different directions. So if you're teaching customer service, but it's more about trust, perhaps, maybe it's more about communications, maybe it's more about relationship building, you need to have those exercises you can bring in then to help them enter into that conversation, because it's what they're looking for, not what you're looking for. So you got to meet their needs.
I love that whole visual of the toolbox. I think that's really, really important. And experienced trainers that I know have that toolbox, have that set of tools all ready to go. And that's why I like doing these videos, that we're going to find out what kind of tools are in your toolbox and help trainers that are new to the profession maybe develop their toolbox as well. I'm going to play a game with you, Rick. It's called Quick Answers. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Where was the worst place, location, or room or place that you've ever facilitated?
In a hallway between an open restaurant and a back room for a kitchen area. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. Things going on in all areas, and trying to set up in this hallway to do the training. A little noisy, a little bit chaotic.
And where was the best place or best location that you ever did training? Sedona, Arizona. So if you're looking for places that inspire people,
And if you wake up in the morning, you see the sun coming up, or you see the sunset in Sedona, you'd know that that's a great place to go and do training. But also at the Opryland Hotel in the Gaylord Opryland Hotel in Nashville, was a great setting as well for another one. So it just come to mind right now.
That's wonderful. What is your favorite teaching or facilitating prop?
Prop. I had a awesome Tossum chicken I used to use for my last company, or not before, when I worked for PepsiCo, I worked for KFC. And so the awesome Tossum chicken, it was something I could throw around. It was soft. And as it was their time to speak or they wanted to speak, you could throw that to them. It would make this nice clucking chicken noise. But since we worked for KFC and it's chicken business, it made a lot of sense at that time to use that. And people had fun with it. It's about having fun and creating a way that people could throw that around to other people to get them to speak. And you not having to point out to people, well, you're next. The audience had that participation.
That's wonderful, actually giving empowerment to the group. Who was your most famous participant that you've ever taught?
That's interesting. I think everybody's world famous. All my participants. So people if people who are engaged in these conversations, I'm a believer in Covey's habit number 8. We're all leaders. So I think that anybody can be famous to a person or a group or something else. So I don't know that I have one person that stands out that I could say, well, this movie star or this political person. But I think in general, just going into the training and considering everybody as a leader, everybody is famous, that you have a whole different mindset than when you're interacting with them.
I love that answer. That's wonderful, Rick. And that's one thing I really love about you is that you see the uniqueness in each individual and you can really bring that out in people and you can figure out what their strengths are as well and play to their strengths. Next question. How far have you traveled for a 1-day or a few hour class?
So we were opening a new travel center at my last company, and my daughters had an event the evening before. And so I wanted to stay around home versus traveling halfway. And so I actually got up early in the morning, I think around 5 a.m., and I traveled up to, I can't remember if it was Mauston, Wisconsin, or somewhere in Iowa. So it was probably a 500-mile drive that day. And as soon as I got out of the car, they were waiting for me, and they had the class set up, and I started teaching the class. So I started out at 5 or 6, got there, how many hours is that? So probably about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then taught through into the evening to get this team ready for their opening the next day.
Wow. That's something.
Would I do that again? I don't know if I'd do that again.
Yeah, at least you got to see your daughter. That's the good part. And I have one last question for you. If you had advice for somebody starting out in the talent development field, what advice would you give them?
I would say take as many opportunities as you can to get out and interact with people and observe other trainers, their styles, what they're doing. Find ways to network with people, especially in the training field, to find ways to get information and feedback on what they think works, what they feel works, things that are effective for them. Take time to get people to give you feedback. So if you can get somebody to videotape you when you're doing a presentation, and then actually be able to look at that videotape and then get feedback from a mentor or another trainer, that's very helpful. And the one I liked the most, one training I went to was Bob Pike's Creative Training Techniques. And that opened my eyes quite a bit to how can you make training more interactive, more fun, more engaging, because when people are having fun, they're engaged in the classroom, they typically pick up a lot more information and take that away with them. So I would say do something like that where you can pick up new techniques to make your training more impactful, more engaging, more interactive, and then more interaction networking with other people in the field.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, Bob Pike has an excellent program. He is just a legend in the training and development field and a really nice man too. I remember once at one of the ICE conferences, I had such a really terrible bad headache, and he happened to be walking past, and we started talking, and he says, "Are you okay?" I said, "I have a really bad headache." He reached in his pocket and pulled out like 2 aspirin and gave them to me. I mean, just a really neat person. This is the end of the questions I have for you, Rick, and I want to thank you so much. I think we're going to call this advice from a seasoned expert in talent development, because that's how I see you. Very experienced, very talented, and gosh, you've been doing this for a really long time too. So ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Rick Holt for the answers to his questions, because it really gave us a lot of insight. Thank you,
Thank you for your
Rick.
time, Lori.